Hello, everyone, and welcome to the LFGHO Aave Labs workshop, Improving UX of DeFi Applications. Joining us today is Jouni Helminen, who will be taking us through this session. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jouni to get the session started.
Awesome. Thanks, Rory. And hello, everyone. I can see we got a bunch of participants already. I can't see your faces. I'm just seeing my own screen. But yeah, hi, everybody. Nice to meet you. So just a quick intro. So my name's Jouni. I'll be your design personal trainer for today. And yeah, I'm not really sure what kind of audience it is. I'm guessing hackers, devs, sort of various design experience, maybe some, maybe none. So I thought I'll sort of give you some good tips how to get started, kind of like a half an hour bootstrapping session for design, how to get going or how to improve. Yeah, in the past I've done a bunch of stuff in tech and Ethereum pretty much since the early on. I worked on Aragon as in finance, but now with the Aave or Avara, should I say, on Aave Labs and Lens. And you can find me on Twitter and Lens on the handles there. Just ask me if any questions. If you want to show me some stuff you're building in a hackathon or some feedback, just send me a DM. Well, happy to jump on a call or chat. So today's session is, as I said, how to get started in design, how to sort of get the basic chops. How to build something people want is sort of a classic cliche, but is very true when you think about design in a broader context, not just how things look or, is it pretty, is it aesthetically pleasing? But I think design is such a powerful tool also for figuring out what people actually want, for testing things out, for yeah, effectively understanding, empathizing with the users. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Then some blockchain specific UX tips. So there's a lot of complexity in blockchains. Some of that we can sweep under the carpet. We'll talk a little bit about that, and just more generally, like how to make the blockchain complexity as easy as possible, especially for new users. And then last sort of a hot tip is UI frameworks. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, but we'll cover a few of these. So this can save you a lot of time when you get going, especially in hackathon projects, but also like for actual products. So there's a few of my favorite ones and pros and cons of using UI frameworks in general. And we've got some time in the end for Q&A as well. So just yeah, any point you got any questions that we can save for the end. So how to get started in design? The main things you'll need are sort of these three areas. Is one way to chop things up. I'm sure there's many, but this is something I put together for this talk. So the core craft is something you can't really get away from. You'll need to have these skills, and we'll talk about like how to get better at all of these things. So Figma chops pretty much all of the design these days happens in Figma. There's some other tools still as well, but let's assume you'll be using Figma for this. Prototyping skills, doesn't really matter what tools you use. Could be in Figma. Figma has got some really nice prototyping tools now, basic ones that I'll show you. You could prototype in code. You could use specific prototyping apps like Principle and so on. But it doesn't really matter, whatever you're most familiar with, but you should prototype as quickly as possible and get in front of some eyeballs and get feedback as soon as possible. And then talk about a big community, how you can get involved in the design community, and inspiration, where to find like nice designs to be inspired by. Actually, let's jump into, I've got slides for each of these so we can talk about this in detail that way rather than on this slide. So jumping into the basic skills and inspiration. So design really at core is pretty simple. Like you dealing with fairly basic things, which once you've mastered it is not super quick because you start from zero. Like it'll take you a while for your brain to start getting sensitive to your eyes and taste to start getting sensitive for these things. But the main ingredients you're really cooking with are layout, hierarchy, typography, and color. So those are the basics I would say to get started with. Of course, you've got flows, UX flows, sort of not just the visuals and static screens, but these are very, very important sort of core things to get familiar with. And you'll be like, doesn't matter how long you've been designing, you always sort of these other things, the main big building blocks you'll deal with. Then you can add layer on things on top of that. So of course the flows, make sure that those are very smooth. People find them easy to go through, but you can sort of delight with transitions, micromanipulations, and really reinforce the mental models of how the flows work with these things. And not many people are doing this yet. You see a lot of this in sort of native apps, but on the web, for some reason, even though tools are there, people don't really use this as much as they could. Not overuse it, like it's easy to go overboard with this stuff, but I've got some nice examples to show you, like how to tastefully use this to basically elevate the perceived quality, the polish, and the delight. Like the users generally find these kind of small touches quite delightful. And then, yeah, lastly, community, just to get inspired, remix stuff. So I would say the best way to get started really is to take existing designs, maybe find a web page you really like, try and recreate that in Figma from scratch, effectively. You'll start to understand the decisions the designer of that app or page put together, why they put certain type sizes in certain places, how many type sizes they're using, how does their padding look, how does their hierarchy on the page look, layout. So I would just start with that. Effectively, just do maybe start with 4 or 5 of the things that you most like. Just recreate them, like literally just draw over them, design over them in Figma, and then you'll start to get an understanding for how to put things together. There's a lot of resources. You can take a screenshot of this. This will be recorded, but the resources I would use to get started would be the Figma community is great. So there's a site for that just on the figma.com/community, where it's effectively the closest you'll get to GitHub for design, where people post a lot of sort of files for you to just browse and use. They have different licenses on what you can do with them, but a lot of it is just you can run with it. But it sort of helps to, as with open source, when you can see how exactly these things are made, how the file is structured, how everything works. It's really helpful to see how this who more advanced than you are doing these things. Dribble is the old sort of favorite, but still nice for inspiration. I'd say when you get started, first thing you want to get inspired by something. It doesn't have to be even in the same domain. It could be up for something completely different, but just look at cool new stuff on Dribble, or even Pinterest is a bit underrated, but just immerse yourself. Arena is another good one. Immerse yourself in just sort of going through pages and pages of good design, and then you'll pick up on ideas. And it could be, as I said, a completely different domain, but it doesn't really matter. Most of the design is still very universal. Design Code is a fantastic set of courses for designers and developers. So I've got a screenshot here just to make it more visual so that you can remember as well. So yeah, designcode.io, in no way affiliated, but this is great. Mengto and gang have done a great job on this for you to basically have a more handheld path in terms of learning and building stuff. So they've got courses for Figma, for React, for iOS, Swift, UI, various things that sort of combine design and code together, which is really is a superpower if you can do a bit of both. Like typically people are stronger on one or the other, but if you can do both, even have a sensibility, it's really a superpower that you'll be far ahead of most people. And this is just a screenshot of Figma community, so just type in whatever you want. Loads of Figma files will come up that you can just dive into. Some of them are paid, some of them are free, but you can find a lot of great stuff here as well to dive into. So yeah, that's the sort of the first part of getting inspired, learning the basic jobs. Then I'd say one major thing that is maybe not obvious when people think of design is what it actually entails, but is a big part of design is perspective shift. So you really have to almost like see the world through somebody else's eyes, the eyes of the people who are going to use your app or site or wherever it may be. So some people are better with this than others, and you can use user testing to help with this as well. We'll talk about that more, but you really need to not just think for yourself, like, or think what other people might want. You need to sort of deeply understand what their needs are, and when they start using their prototype, like how they stumble and how they fail. So yeah, I'd say you'll have some intuitions, but you want to validate them pretty soon as well. Intuitions, if you are kind of the audience for your app yourself, you can use introspection, but I think it's still a good idea to test with users as soon as you can, and quite often as well. It's something that never really is finished. Talking to users, never too early or never too late to talk to users. And you might have a grand vision, but just keep poking holes. Ask your friends who are more grounded to poke holes at it. It'll helpful in a constructive way, not to bring you down, but to help you maybe spot where the holes might be. And then the last portion of this is the taste and polish. So taste is really, I think, really difficult to define. It's something you just become more sensitive to certain things. Like, I guess if you're a chef, like you're an amateur chef, you're just cooking at home, compared to like somebody who works at a Michelin restaurant, they can probably taste every single ingredient, every single spice in the dish, compared to sort of normal people. Same with musicians, I think, versus somebody who's just listening to music. It sounds good, but you can't really tell why it sounds good or why it's good. It's just good. But once you sort of develop this sensibility, then you'll be able to pinpoint and sort of be more specific about why things are good, why things are bad. You should also like be allergic to friction and things that don't work. There's so many things in the world that are not very well designed, but people just get used to it and sort of take it for granted. But another thing I'd say is to always, like, if something, like, just be critical of, like, if it doesn't feel good, keep working on it, keep polishing it until it feels perfect, or until there's no doubts about, what's going to happen next. Or, like, if you have any doubts when you're using it, when you're testing, you can be sure that your user is going to have those same doubts. Also, don't layer too many things in the designs at the same time. It's something that happens a lot in the beginning. People just put a lot of things together, but the best designs tend to be fairly sparse. They have some things, have a lot of space around them, and then you can really elevate the things. Again, like the cooking analogy, I think is pretty good here. Yeah, just use the best ingredients sparingly, and then yeah, just keep working the sweat the details part of this is super important. So yeah, just keep reducing things. Again, like, you can start with a lot of things. When you start a design process, you'll just, maybe you put some mood boards together in Figma, you'll start working on some initial ideas, but just keep chiseling it. Like, take away, like, if there's a lot of things, a lot of text, just take away as much as you can until it's almost too much, and then you can bring something back. But you really want to be sort of removing the cognitive load and friction. Like, a lot of that is actually the design process. You may think it's just making things look nice, but it's taking away a lot of things. Family, I'd say, our recent design friends who've joined Vara are extremely good at this. So check out the family website for inspiration. And I've actually got a quick video of this, just on sweating the details, and something that Benji from Family shared earlier. So this is some excellent work the family designers and developers have done. Just sort of onboarding flow to Family Wallet, but I thought it's really great in terms of the details and the motion work. So I'd want to share this with you guys. I don't know how that good frame rate is, but you can see how the transition from one state to another, it really sort of reinforces the mental model of where you're moving to, where you're going, instead of just being sort of abrupt changes or just a normal slide. There's like, and this is another sort of trick I recommend. Use QuickTime Pro on your Mac, or a screen, some kind of a screen recording thing on your phone. If you see something really nice, just record it and go through it frame by frame, or slow it down. You can see exactly, you can sort of reverse engineer how these transitions are done from one screen to another. and then it can really help you sort of try and understand them, how they work as well as they work. Because a lot of this transition work just sort of happens in 1 or 2 seconds and is difficult to see a lot of the time. Family app is, yeah, I don't work on this personally, but as far as I know, it's in Swift. All of it is native iOS. So last thing on this, the sort of the three main things is building something people want, and this sort of cliche, a little bit of a cliche, but it's super important. And how do we sort of figure this out? So how do you use design to help find your way to product market fit? So it turns out like there's a lot of things in that sort of more UX research toolkit that you can use for this. But it's really about speed and then talking to users, I would say. So prototyping, getting stuff built, don't necessarily make it perfect. Like there's a balance between speed and quality, and I think on some type of products, the bar for quality before you start sharing it, it depends on who you share with. If your friends maybe they don't care so much, but before you start sharing publicly, then the bar for quality can be higher. But you want to pick the prototyping tools you're the best in and the fastest in, I would say, typically. Whether that's in Figma or just React or whatever, just run with that. And then get feedback as soon as you can. As soon as you've got something that works, show it to your friends, share it on Twitter, maybe see if you can put together like some kind of one-to-one sessions on like getting people on Zoom for half an hour to walk them through it. Because you want to see them not just sort of comment on design. Twitter, the comments tend to be like, it looks great, or, more on the design of things. But as when you're testing things, you want people to actually use it and you want to see them use it. So like this kind of qualitative one-to-one interviews are really good for this. You can set this up. I'd say 5 for 6 usually gives you a pretty broad spectrum of different types of people using your prototype. And that's usually enough, sort of half an hour to 1 hour calls with people. Or if you can do it in person, that's great too. But yeah, Zoom works great for this. Then sort of surveys, once you get to a bit further along, surveys, unmoderated prototypes. Maze is a tool for this, where you can just put your Figma prototypes on a link and then sort of set up tasks next to it, and then people can reply, try and do the task in your Figma prototype and write comments and stuff like this. It's nice to, if you want to run research at scale for 100 or 1,000 people, then obviously you can't be on Zoom calls with all of them. So this type of tools are useful for that. You can DIY a lot of this stuff. I would recommend for user research, maybe starting if you're able to, if you have budget or are able to work with user like professional UX researcher. Open UX is a new sort of Web3 focused shop for that. We worked with them a couple of times. They're really good, but also others. I recommend this. You can do it for like one or two sessions, and you pretty much get the gist, and you can do it yourself after that. Then, so the user research does have limits. Like the users won't design the product for you, but this will really help you uncover things you don't see yourself. And we all are blind to a lot of things when we work in something for a while. So it's super helpful. And then one last tip on this use testing, just make it easy to use test as you're building it. So this is a Figma click through. That's the easy way to do a prototype you can put in front of people with Maze. If it's a already built product, make sure on testnet, make sure that you got the faucet in. It's easy for people to get the tokens and whatever they need to get going, or even if it's just the FE front end flows, then just make sure that they can basically run through that without too many hoops, or you're not gonna get the sort of the feedback you want. Then some blockchain specific UX tips. So I've got a few for this. There's a lot actually. It could have been a whole talk, this one, but there's a lot of complexity in blockchain, starting from the core protocol. Like, why do we have layer twos and bridging to start off with? Like, it's not something the users would want. So we'll kind of have to then hide away this complexity, like signing transactions, approvals, all this kind of stuff. Wallets in the first place, just getting a wallet for somebody who's new to the space is already a bit like a stumbling block. So thankfully, there's better and better solutions for all of this stuff. If it's a consumer app you're building, there's a lot of good embedded wallets you can use now if it's not sort of super high value transactions. So consider those kind of things. like hiding away the cross-chain stuff on Ethereum specifically. Maybe not so much in Solana, but like yeah, Ethereum's got a lot of these issues with the liquidity all over the place. People needing to bridge from L2 to L2. But again, there's starting to be pretty nice solutions like with layer 0 for cross-chain swaps, where maybe you don't really need to. Depends on your application, of course. Like if it's a DeFi application for a specific thing, then these things are extremely important. But if it's like a consumer application like Lens, maybe, and you're posting like Zora NFTs on Lens, you don't probably want your users to have to bridge their ETH to Zora just to be able to mint like something that appears in the post in front of you. So this kind of cross-chain swapping is really nice, and we're building this into Lens. But also any kind of more consumer application, I think, is a nice way to hide this layer 2 complexity. And then, of course, you have again, these things work for some things, don't work for everything. But bundle transactions with account abstraction starting to be a thing. Gasless, where effectively sponsor the gas if it's a low cost chain, and this type of things. I think also it's a combination of many things really help. And then one last thing, again, doesn't work for everything, but for sort of non-financial applications in particular, it's great to reduce the perceived latency with optimistic UI. So in your UI, just sort of pretend that it's already happened, even if it's mining in the background. You can have maybe some sort of a pending state, but don't block the UI. Like just let the user get on with their life. And if it fails for some reason, most of the time it doesn't. But if it fails, then you can at that point pop up a toast and say, "Let's try again." But don't like make the users wait. Okay. So some other things on this complexity topic, we can breeze through this. But it's a good idea sometimes to start from mobile first, just because it forces you to think about what's absolutely essential and check the rest. If you got a large canvas and desktop, typically there's more space to add more stuff to it. And with this kind of constraint mobile, even if your sort of target audience is on desktop, is sometimes useful exercise. And then also it's easier to usually start from mobile design, go to desktop, sort of blow it up rather than the other way around. It doesn't work so well. Okay, so let's look at some examples. There's been a lot of text and a lot of talking, so it's practical examples. So this is a current UI of Aave. Not designed by us, but sort of good first step for switching tokens in particular. So there's it's functional, but there's quite a lot going on here. There's not very good hierarchy of things in here. When you sort of pick your assets that you want to swap from, the drop down's quite small, and there's things that could be improved. So yeah, for this particular example, I just think it's easier to talk about specific examples. Let's look at what we could improve here, for instance. So one is like focus. I think is much better to start with like little information by default. Just again the essentials. In this instance, we've been blood background, but even just the sort of insides of the model here. And then some better hierarchy effectively. So you don't have a lot of things like a lot of strange gaps and like lots of different type sizes and so on. And then like the asset drop down, I think it's nice to have a search in there. It's nice to see also the dollar value of these tokens. Just sort of basic things like that. Nice to have it centered and not sort of cramped in the corner or small. And then maybe when you get to the sort of end of this more Uniswap style token switcher, again, like think about what's absolutely essential to show. You can always show the extra things like on a expanded view of this. Like these are probably the main things people want to see. And then if you want to see more stuff, then you can show them rather than showing this up front, because it looks quite scary. Like even though this is already reduced to a minimum, like it's not something people necessarily need to see up front. So it's better to hide things and like show more of this type of UX patterns, and then show like the extra stuff than just put everything on screen by default. And just another example of how we could reimagine this, maybe from more first principles. So a lot of time it is good to take existing patterns, like we are very super familiar with this Uniswap style swap widget, but there's probably other sort of paths for designing a simple widget with the same kind of stuff. So making, again, the things that you want to be big or focused on very, very big, and then the other things can be a bit smaller. Cool. The last thing, UI libraries. I'm not gonna, since we're pretty close to the end, not gonna spend too much time on this, but effectively, yeah, so you can save a lot of time with these things if your aim is to get to market fast. You don't need to design these components, build them in React. It's all sort of built for you. These can be quite opinionated. Sometimes they introduce bloat to your code base, but a lot of the good ones are good and can be extendable. Sometimes it's a bit painful, but they are extendable. And out of the box, of course, it's going to look generic like every other app with the same framework, but you can theme most of these things. So I would say, just to wrap things up, I would say these are probably my top ones I would recommend for people. There's many other ones, and these are sort of just subjective, but you may be familiar with this. But if not, then check this out. Shadsians, it's a great one from, forget the dev's name, but very good front-end dev. Tailwind UI, or Catalyst, I think it's called now, is great again. It's paid, but it is worth the money, in my opinion, if you're in the Tailwind camp. Radix UI is great. They also have headless versions of these components, and then MUI is what we currently use on Aave. It's a little bit more old school, but still pretty complete. So just sort of quick screenshots of this, and we can start taking questions. Yeah. Cool. So we've got to the end. Any thoughts? Any questions?
There was one question early on at the beginning. Is too many animations bad?
Yeah, I'd say it's kind of comes down to taste. Like, you don't want to distract people. Like with animations, I would just say it's nice to have it sparse, because then it's kind of a delight, like instead of too much of a thing, and then it can get quite distracting as well. So it's difficult to say what's too many. Like, you can, like in an onboard journey, for instance, you could have a transition between, like we saw in the family example, like there's a lot of transitions, but it's not like a circus that's going on. So it's just a matter of taste, I think. But yeah, I'd say start with no animations and just add some to enhance rather than for effect. Cool. Any other
And
questions?
then yeah, the going closer, I guess, towards the bottom, there was a question, or I guess maybe, yeah, a question, don't you already see the 1 equals 2502.25 in the inputs? Why duplicate it? This was, I think, when you were going through the few slides, the
Okay,
drop downs.
I see. I missed that one. Yeah, I think maybe that was just the sort of the minimum you're going to get, maybe. Yeah, that design is still a work in progress. So yeah, but I think that's the sort of pattern you see on Uniswap as well. You want to see with the slippage sort of take into account what's the minimum you can expect, because you can't tell a slippage ahead of time.
And there was a question, how to convert Figma design to code. Please don't get mad. I'm new.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I wish there was some AI tool to magically do that. There isn't really. So yeah, the other way around, it works pretty well. There's plugins that you can take an existing website and convert it to Figma, layered Figma. But all the sort of automated tools I've seen from taking Figma into code, they don't really work that well. So I mean, otherwise, I guess we wouldn't need front-end engineers too much, but maybe at some point AI will figure out. So far, yeah, I haven't seen anything that's really that great, and that's maybe sort of one sort of benefit for these UI libraries, is because they're already built. So sometimes you have Figma versions of those, so you can sort of a prototype flows in Figma quickly, but you don't have to build all the components from scratch basically then for your front end. So you'll save a lot of time that way.
And there was a question on what are your thoughts about scaffold ETH?
I haven't actually used Scaffold. I saw it on our dev garden call yesterday. Yeah, I've have not personally used it. So yeah, I can't say, but the dev who was showing the smart post with they had used scaffold. They seemed pretty impressed with it. So sounds like a good thing. Yeah. So Aave uses MUI. Yeah, I don't know if we would stick with it if we were to redesign Aave at this point. It is good, but yeah, there's also a lot of good competition these days.
I think that's the only question
Cool.
so far. So if anybody does have any questions, or if you think of questions after, we end this call, please definitely reach out to the partners in the Discord channels and their partner channels. And if you haven't done so already, connect your Hacker dashboard to Discord so you are able to access those specific partner channels. But yeah, if there are no other questions, then great. Thank you all for attending, and thank you, Yoni, for hosting this great session. Just a reminder, we have the opening ceremony and kickoff later today, and then another team formation session and a few other workshops later today as well. This last question, do we need to have the teams finalized by today? No, you don't need them finalized today. You just need to make sure that if there are people that haven't applied to LFGO yet, that they do so by today. But yeah, you can still mess around with your teams for most of the event. But yeah. So awesome. Cheers. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. And thanks again, Yoni.
Thank you.